The Level 1 Power Pack here from Roush is an extremely basic and also extremely easy way to squeeze up to 18 horsepower and 26 pound-feet of torque to the tires out of your 5-liter equipped 2018 and newer F-150. Now the kit will include the Roush Cold Air, as you can see, along with the corresponding calibration voucher, all for right around that $900 price point. Installation for the intake itself will be a breeze. However, that calibration will need to be flashed by your local dealer, unless that is you do have access to the J2534 interface tool. So therefore, just expect a solid 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter and about an hour or so to complete from start to finish. So the Roush Power Packs have been an extremely popular, extremely reliable way to squeeze more power and torque out of your Mustang or truck for years now. And the same is going to be said here for the newer F-150 and the 5-liter power plant. Now those advertised numbers again of 18 and 26 do come directly from Roush, but us having our in-house dyno jet here, we want to put that to the test. So we strapped down our 2018 5-liter truck, ran it on 93 octane, and here are those results. Baseline run using our 2018 5-liter F-150 with 93 octane in the tank gave us 334 horsepower and 339 pound-feet of torque at the rear wheels. With the Level 1 Roush Power Pack installed and 93 octane, the truck is now making 349 horsepower and 355 pound-feet of torque again at the rear wheels. That makes for a peak gain of 15 horsepower and 16 pound-feet of torque over our baseline numbers, and gains of as much as 21 horsepower and 24 pound-feet of torque under the curve. But with the power numbers out of the way, let's talk a little bit more about the Roush Power Pack here. And at first glance, the Level 1 kit is a very basic system, right? Half of the kit will be the very solid Roush Cold Air intake system, which is going to ultimately replace that factory airbox and cheap paper element factory filter. Now, in that place, you're going to look at a reusable high-flow dry filter from Roush and quality sealed airbox. Now the Roush filter will not only be an improvement in filtration and appearance, I guess you could say here, right? But also things like less intake restriction, which is going to help result in a little bit more power, and things like improved throttle response. Finally guys, not as important of course, but certainly worth noting, a more modified look under the hood, thanks to the cool sealed enclosure here and window that helps you keep an eye on your filter's condition. Now because this thing is sealed, recently Roush did move to a sealed enclosure. You can also look forward to things like slightly lower intake air temperatures when compared to other aftermarket systems that might incorporate an open element style filter. Now the second part of the Level 1 kit is going to be the Roush calibration. And while yes, it is included with the Power Pack, what you're really receiving here guys is this voucher that you will need to take to your dealer to get flashed to your truck using the tool we talked about earlier. So don't expect to receive a handheld tuning device or anything like that, because that's simply not the case here at the Roush kits. But once that calibration has been flashed to your truck, you can expect to see similar gains to what we showed you earlier, using the intake along with the calibration on at least 91 octane or 93 octane fuels. Now this is very important to point out because yes, you still can use this system with lesser octane fuels, 87, 89. Ideally, you're not going to see the big gains like we talked about in this video unless you're using the premium or higher octane fuels. Why? Well, the truck is going to be happier, it's going to see more ignition timing, and therefore you're going to make more power overall. So at the end of the day, it's a 12-to-1 motor guys, high compression. Do yourself a favor and run premium fuel. Now that increased power is made possible thanks to things like improved camshaft timing, focus on throttle mapping to give the truck a sportier feel overall, and again, improved throttle response. Now, if you did want to take advantage, Roush does offer an additional 3-year, 36,000-mile warranty, but you have to apply for that with Roush directly, and it must be done so immediately after the installation. But what do you say we switch gears and briefly talk about the installation? And again, not too difficult here, guys. Basic cold air install is gonna get a strong 1 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter using some pretty basic hand tools. But again, you will need to factor in the caveat of either scheduling a trip to your dealer, which is about an hour's worth of labor here to flash a truck, or if you have a buddy that has access to a pass-through device like the J2534 for instance, you can do it on your own time as long as you download the Roush RDT software. But without further ado, here's that walkthrough we promised you earlier along with a quick tool breakdown. Tools I used for this installation include a 3/8 ratchet, 1/4-inch ratchet, 1/4-inch extension, 7mm socket, 8mm socket, 10mm socket, 13mm socket, T30 Torx tool, pin removal tool, flathead screwdriver, and a cordless ratchet or impact. All right guys, kicking off our Roush Power Pack install. The first step here is obviously remove our factory intake. Really not that difficult. We're gonna start by loosening up the clamp here at the throttle body. With our connection at the throttle body all loose, now we're going to move over to this 13mm bolt that secures the air box to the inner fender area. We are going to remove this now with our 13mm socket, but don't lose this bolt because it will be used in future steps. All right, we're moving right along. Now we just need to disconnect any of our hoses connected to our factory intake tube. On our truck, there are two right here, and then also this breather for our coolant reservoir that we're gonna have to move just to remove the factory intake. So remove these clips, press down on the black, pull back. With the PCV hose, there's actually a little tab here. You're gonna wanna push down on this. You can see me pushing it right now with my finger. Push down and pull back. Going to disconnect this clamp here at the air box. This will allow us to separate the air box from the tube itself. Again, there's a couple of different ways to remove your factory air box, but we're going to just do it this way. All right, with that clamp loosened up, separate our intake tube. Watch our coolant overflow line here. Angle out of place. Now before we yank our air box out of here, we do also have to yank out the snorkel at the same time since they are connected. In order to do so, simply grab your panel removal tool, flathead screwdriver, whatever you have, and remove these two clips next. All right, with those two clips removed, we can yank the entire airbox assembly and duct or snorkel out of the engine bay. Now we can get started assembling our Roush intake system. I found that easier to do it on a workbench or a table rather than working in the engine bay myself. First things first, we're gonna get our hose connections in place along with these two little rubber grommets. Now with these grommets, I found that spraying them with a little soapy water or something just to kind of give it some sort of lubrication to get in the hole makes the job a little bit easier. Now for our second one, again, spray a little bit of soapy water on it. And sometimes I also found that if it's being a little stubborn, grabbing a flathead screwdriver to kind of finish off the job is another good way to do it. So I like to get it started. All right, applying our same soapy water technique, grab a little soap water mixture here for the grommet along with the smaller fitting which goes closest to the filter opening. And same thing for the larger PCV fitting. A little soap and water here, a little bit on the opening. Now we can grab our couplers and then apply them or install them onto the intake tube, starting with our small one. At this point, you can put a couple of clamps over the coupler loosely, just get them in place for later on. The clamp at the plastic intake tube, you can actually snug up a little bit. The clamp that's going to be used to secure to the throttle body, leave that loose obviously because we still need to install that. I just like to get it in place so it's ready to go once we're ready for the installation. Now we can move on to the larger coupler at the filter side. Again, install our clamps. The larger clamps here are going to use an 8mm socket, whereas the smaller ones are going to utilize a 7mm socket. So we can tighten up this clamp here at the larger connection. And we'll tighten this one up loosely, but obviously again not too tight because we need to connect this portion here yet to our filter. I just like to tighten it up enough so it won't slide off the coupler. With our intake tube fully prepped, we can set this aside for now. We're going to work on our airbox portion next. And for that, you need to grab your filter, of course, along with your filter adapter and the airbox itself. Now you will notice the airbox here, the filter adapter is going to live in here, where it's going to be secured by the two 10mm bolts that are included with the kit. And that's going to live in there. So with that being said, you want to situate the filter and more importantly the clamp in a way that you can actually access the clamp here at any given point. So when it's time to clean your filter, you can gain access to this with your socket or your flathead easily, just so it's not on the bottom side of the filter or something like that, making it very difficult to remove. So with all that said, let's start throwing this thing together. First up, we're going to grab our Roush filter, grab our filter adapter, slide that into place. Again, referencing these two holes here, I'm going to make sure we can access this clamp pretty easily. So right about there looks nice. And now grab your 8mm socket and tighten it up. With our clamp nice and tight, we can grab our Roush airbox and insert the filter assembly and adapter through the hole in order to secure these two 10mm bolts now. Start each bolt by hand, a couple threads. Once you have them started, you can grab your 10mm socket and tighten them down. All right, we're almost ready to throw our new Roush intake in the engine bay, but before we do need to separate the snorkel or inlet from the factory airbox because it will be reused here with our Roush system. In order to do so, grab your 8mm socket. There is one little screw right here connecting the two. Go ahead and remove that next. With that screw removed, a lot of times you need to help the snorkel out from the factory airbox, give it a little help. I like using a panel removal tool or sometimes a flathead screwdriver, whatever you have access to in order to pry from the inside of your airbox out. With our snorkel now separated, we can insert that and install it into our Roush airbox in reverse order. So stick it on in. And again, we are going to secure it using that same screw we removed in the first step with our 8mm socket. Now, before we toss the Roush in the engine bay of our 5-liter truck, we thought it'd be a good idea to pull them both on the table, kind of show you the differences between the two, and side by side it's pretty obvious, right? The biggest difference is going to be your filter. Whereas the factory airbox utilizes that cheap Paper Element factory filter. It's kind of a one and done thing. Gets dirty, you toss it every year or so. The Roush, on the other hand, is going to feature a reusable dry filter that's going to equate to roughly 20 to 30% less restriction than the OE filter. What's that mean? Well, that's where you're getting the power, that's where you're getting a little bit more miles per gallon and a little bit more sound. Now, one thing you can say about the factory airbox is, well, it's a sealed enclosure. You're not going to get as much heat soak as you would with an open air enclosure like the Roush. However, with 2018, Roush gave you a lid for their airbox. So now you have a sealed enclosure as well if you'd like, or you can leave the top off and get more of that sound that kind of is more reminiscent of an aftermarket intake, more of that growl and so on. So you got the best of both worlds here with the Roush, and I really dig that. As for the tubes themselves, well, side by side, you can see the diameter of the Roush is certainly a little bit larger, as is the capacity of your airbox. Just a really well-made unit. I really like the Roush systems because, again, it gives off a factory style of build, if you will. It's not flashy, there's not a ton of logos stamped all over it. And I think it's great because of that, kind of the less is more approach while delivering the goods. So now that you know the slight differences between the two, what do you say we get this installed? Before we actually drop the new Roush airbox in place, we do need to reinstall that 13mm bolt I told you about earlier, along with the rubber grommet that you took off your factory airbox. With that grommet in place, now we can grab our Roush airbox and lower it into place. But I do want to show you guys, there's a couple feet down here, basically these little pegs that need to sit into these two little rubber grommets. Once you have those situated, make sure the side of the airbox is situated in the rubber grommet and you should be good to go. With our air inlet in place, or our snorkel, now we're going to grab our Christmas tree clips and go ahead and reinsert those. All right, we've got our Roush tube. Kind of fish it in the engine bay here. I'm going to get the throttle body connected first to the coupler. With that in place, go ahead and get the big coupler situated on the filter adapter. All right, we've got our coupler in place here. Grab our 7mm socket, tighten things up. Now we're switching to our 8mm socket. We're going to tighten up this clamp here at the filter adapter. All right, we're almost home free, but now we have to reattach our PCV and hose lines. Push them into place. All right, at this point, the installation of the Roush intake itself is pretty much complete. However, if you do want to install the lid that is included with the kit, you need a T30 Torx tool to get the included screws in place. Get them all started by hand here. Now at this point, you can grab your T30 Torx tool, whether it be on a ratchet, cordless ratchet, whatever you have, and secure all of your bolts. And with our final bolts tightened up, that wraps up the installation of the Roush intake for our Power Pack Stage 1 here with our 2018 and newer 5-liter truck. Now at this point, most of you guys at home are probably just gonna have to drive to the dealer with your voucher in hand and get your tune flashed by your local dealer. Or if you happen to have a J2534 passenger device, at this point you would complete the calibration. Now I do wanna point out this is not a tune required intake, so therefore you can install this, drive to the dealer with no issue whatsoever. Hey, we hope you enjoyed this review and install of the Roush Power Pack Stage 1 kit. Again, available for your 2018 and newer 5-liter truck. And keep in mind, for more cool products and videos like this, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.